Before we start, we advise viewers to consider carefully. The following content is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. This is the verbatim testimony in federal court regarding the trial of Sean Diddy Combs, reported by Inner City Press. In a packed courtroom already shaken by shocking testimonies, Hollywood superstar Leonardo DiCaprio took the stand, and no one could have predicted what would come next. Famous for his blockbuster films and environmental activism, DiCaprio revealed a dark chapter in his life that most people could never have imagined. His voice trembled as he recounted one fateful night when Sean Diddy Combs' invitation changed everything he thought he knew about celebrity parties. It wasn't just champagne and cameras. This was something much darker. What Leonardo revealed not only stunned the jury, but also sparked a media frenzy that forced even the most powerful figures to confront the truth. What did he see? Why has he stayed silent for so long? And what does this mean for the future of Diddy's trial? The silence in the courtroom was palpable. Cameras weren't allowed inside. But that didn't matter. The whole world was watching. Reporters lined the courthouse steps, frantically typing on their laptops, trying to keep up with this story of the decade. And then the unexpected moment arrived. Leonardo DiCaprio, one of the most famous actors alive, walked into the room. He wore a dark suit and had a visibly trembling expression, taking slow, cautious steps toward the witness stand. The sound of heavy breathing echoed through the gallery. This wasn't a fleeting moment. This was a testimony. The judge called for silence. DiCaprio sat down, took a breath, and looked straight at Sean Diddy Combs across the room. What unfolded next wasn't a performance. It was a confession of the horror he witnessed at a private party he was once invited to, hosted by Diddy himself. "I've been to many strange parties in Hollywood," he began, his tone even but distant. But this one was different. It was orchestrated. He described a secluded, gated mansion with an entrance where guests arrived by private jet. DiCaprio admitted he was quite curious. "I thought it would be glamorous. A-list celebrities mingling. That sort of thing. But what I walked into was completely different." According to DiCaprio, the party started off like any upscale gathering. Champagne, security, gourmet catering, the whole 9 yards. But as the night wore on, he began to notice something was off. He mentioned there were rooms that guests weren't allowed to enter, people who looked too young to drink, and the atmosphere felt distinctly tense. He admitted, "I felt like I had walked into a place I shouldn't be." Then, he dropped a bombshell. "There's a back room that I wasn't allowed to see. The door was cracked. I saw cameras, people lined up, and Diddy was there calling the shots. There's a back room that I wasn't allowed to see. The door was cracked. I saw cameras, people lined up, and Diddy was there calling the shots." It was no longer a party. It was something darker, something orchestrated. The whole gallery was gasping. Diddy sat still, flanked by his legal team. The judge called for a brief recess as the murmurs turned into headlines. DiCaprio's testimony shattered the veil surrounding Diddy's inner circle. And this was just the beginning. After the break, Leonardo DiCaprio returned to the stand. This time, he looked even more determined. What he was about to say would place him at the center of one of the most alarming revelations in the entire case. As I looked into the back room, he paused and said, "I don't know if what I witnessed was illegal, but I knew it was wrong. The people there, some looked anxious as they glanced at the cameras. They didn't seem to be having fun. They were being watched." He described a girl no older than 20 sitting on a red velvet couch, surrounded by a group of much older men. DiCaprio said, "I looked at her for a moment, and in that glance, she looked so frightened." His voice was choked, and the whole courtroom was hanging on every word he said. That look never left me. Leo then described the security force at the party as oddly aggressive. Guests weren't allowed to wander or ask questions. "You had to stay in the public area," he continued. "There were security personnel, some wearing earpieces, some not. They would be polite but firmly guide you if you tried to explore. But it wasn't just the rooms that were off limits, but also the behavior." DiCaprio stated that by midnight, he began to notice many people disappearing for extended periods. Famous faces he recognized suddenly vanished, and then reappeared looking pale or disoriented. It was more than just a party. It was as if people were being processed. That was the term I kept hearing, processed. The entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath in disbelief. Leonardo said he tried to leave early but was told his driver was running late. When he insisted, a man in a black suit pulled him aside and calmly said, "Mr. DiCaprio, we have a lot of respect for you, so you can't just leave like this. Please let us escort you to the waiting room." They spoke as if it were a privilege, Leo recalled, but it felt more like a warning. He sat in a glass-walled room for over an hour with no phone signal, just the sound of soft jazz and a bartender who never spoke. Eventually, a car arrived and he was allowed to leave. "I never told anyone," he admitted, "because I didn't think anyone would believe me. But now, having seen what's about to unfold, I have to." The judge nodded solemnly, and Diddy's legal team hurried to take notes. What DiCaprio saw was not a party, and the people inside were its moving parts. After revealing what he saw behind the velvet curtain, DiCaprio was asked if it was a machine, and the people inside were its moving parts. After revealing what he saw behind the velvet curtain, DiCaprio was asked how Diddy reacted to his presence that night. "That's when things got really strange," Leo replied, "because just as I was about to leave that back area, Diddy saw me for just a second, and I swear he looked at me as if I knew too much." The actor described the intensity of that gaze. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even surprise. It seemed like he was calculating, almost as if he was logging me in his mind. Leonardo admitted it was much later that he realized the weight of that moment. When people he knew distanced themselves, when film projects stalled, and when calls went unanswered, it felt as if something invisible had pushed me out of those rooms. He spoke softly but deliberately. He began to see those people from that party again as he passed through gala events and award shows, and they looked at me with strange eyes, as if we were all marked. Leo recounted that he started having nightmares about that house. He tried to brush it off and rationalize it. He told himself, maybe it was just a strange Hollywood thing. But then I saw the accusations, Cassie's story, the videos, and the disappearances. Around that time, he received an anonymous call. They knew I was at the party. The caller said, "You've seen more than you should have. Let it die. Leo." Then they hung up. He never told anyone, not even his manager, his agent, or even his closest friends. Until now. The courtroom was enveloped in stunned silence. The prosecution asked. He had one final question. Why come forward now? DiCaprio looked directly at Diddy and replied, because no one is too big to fall, not even you. And just like that, one of Hollywood's biggest stars had just helped take down one of the most powerful and feared men in the music industry. As the court focused on every word from Leonardo DiCaprio, the prosecution shifted their focus. They asked Leo a question that made his hands visibly shake on the stand. Has anyone ever told you what's going on behind those closed doors? DiCaprio nodded slowly. He said, I didn't want to know, but people still told me. According to his testimony, a fellow actor whose name was kept confidential for safety reasons pulled him aside a few days after the party. The actor told him, you're lucky you left early. There's stuff going on at those parties that's not just about drugs or alcohol. It's about control, blackmail, and a list. Leo looked clearly shaken as he recalled that moment. He said there was a list, a real list that named everyone who had ever been filmed or violated inside that mansion. It was used to make sure people stayed silent, followed the rules, and stayed connected to Diddy. The whole courtroom was stunned. He said it was a way of exchanging favors, not with money, but with silence. Leo revealed that after this conversation, he started noticing how many people he knew were somehow linked to Diddy. Producers, directors, influencers, even ordinary folks who weren't in his circle suddenly supported his projects, showed up at his events, and smiled like everything was normal. But the creepiest part was when Leo described the mansion's architecture. I found out the place had been remodeled not to expand, but to divide, creating hidden rooms, a camera control center, and places no one ever mentioned. He had seen blueprints shared in an industry insiders group chat, as he called them. He didn't present the blueprints in court, but the prosecution confirmed plans to introduce evidence matching Leo's claims. According to DiCaprio, the real purpose of these parties wasn't socializing, it was surveillance. He said they wanted to see how far people would go when they thought no one was watching, but someone always found out. After Leo finished describing the list and the mansion's hidden infrastructure, the judge called for a 15-minute recess. Diddy sat silently at his defense table, gritting his teeth, but for the first time, he didn't look powerful. He looked exposed. After the break, the trial resumed. The prosecutor stood up and asked DiCaprio a question that instantly changed the room's atmosphere. "Mr. DiCaprio, have you ever encountered anyone you believe was being held there against their will?" Leo hesitated. Then he nodded. "I was looking for the bathroom," he said, squinting. "I went further than I intended. I opened a door and went down the stairs when I heard crying." He described a narrow, dark hallway below the main floor, filled with storage doors. At the end of the hallway, there was a small room with a tinted glass window. "I saw a girl inside. She was sitting on the floor, knees hugged to her chest, crying. Leo said she looked no older than 18. I cracked open the door and asked if she was okay. She looked up, terrified, and shook her head. Then a man appeared behind me. It was a security guard. He grabbed the door, slammed it shut, and told me I wasn't allowed down there." Leo recalls exactly what that man said. "Wrong floor. Mr. DiCaprio. You didn't see anything. Go back upstairs." Then he tried to report it, but as he told the court, nobody touched it. No studio. No media. Not even my own team. He described the following weeks as emotionally turbulent after that moment. He had flashbacks. He couldn't focus on his work. He stayed away from public events for almost a year. He said he became obsessed with finding out who the girl was, but it seemed like she didn't exist. No records, no press, nothing. That's when Leo knew something much bigger was going on. Someone had the power to erase a person, he said seriously, and if they could do that, they could do anything. When asked if he believed Diddy knew about the basement, Leo replied, "It's not just his home, it's his design. Nothing happens down there without his approval." The jury was stunned. DiCaprio was no longer just a witness. He was becoming the voice for dozens, maybe hundreds, of people who never had a chance to speak up. The final testimony of the day took a surprising turn when the prosecution asked DiCaprio, "Do you recognize the term the lighthouse in connection with Diddy's events?" Leo nodded. "It's a code name," he said. "Everyone who went to those parties knew what it meant. It's a term passed by word of mouth." The whole room went silent. DiCaprio nodded again. "It's a code name," he said. "Everyone who went to those parties knew what it meant. It's a term whispered among those invited to the deepest levels of his inner circle." He described how the term came up one night during a private chat with a high-level music executive. He told me, "You've been to the lighthouse. Now you know what it means." I said nothing, but I knew he was right. When asked why it was called that, DiCaprio said, "Because you can see everything from inside it, and once you've seen it, you can't go back." But then came the part no one expected. Leo was asked if he ever saw Diddy interact with any high-profile political figures at these events. He took a deep breath, then said, "Barack Obama." The courtroom gasped. He explained, "I never saw Obama at the mansion, but I saw him interact with Diddy at campaign events, fundraisers, and private after-parties. And at least once, I saw Diddy hand something to someone in Obama's group, a sealed envelope. It was discreet, but it wasn't nothing." He said he didn't believe Obama was directly involved in any wrongdoing, but added, "It's hard to believe someone with that much power didn't hear the rumors." Leo recalled a moment at a 2016 event when someone joked, "Don't let Diddy bring the lighthouse to D.C.," and everyone laughed awkwardly. Obama was said to have just smiled and quickly walked away. "I don't think Obama ever went to that mansion," Leo clarified, "but I think he knew, and if he didn't know, then he didn't want to know." The implications were damning not just for Diddy, but for the networks around him. And this story isn't over yet. The prosecutor asked DiCaprio why he didn't come forward sooner. The whole room leaned in as he took a deep breath. "Because I was scared," he said, "not just for my career, but for my life." After that night at the mansion, the girl in the basement, the threats, the whispers about the lighthouse, Leo said he went home and didn't talk to anyone for days. "I couldn't sleep. I kept the lights on. I had security sweep my house for bugs. You think I'm paranoid? Let me tell you this. Paranoia is a survival tool in Hollywood." He admitted that in the years after, he tried multiple times to warn powerful people. "I had dinner with a studio executive. I said, something dark is going on behind the scenes. Someone's going to get hurt if we don't do something." He looked me straight in the eye and said, "Do you want to be in Revenant or not?" According to Leo, every time he tried to speak up, even subtly, he was met with silence, warnings, or veiled threats. A producer reportedly told him, "You speak wrong about Diddy, and you won't have insurance overnight. They'll cancel your contract and you won't even know who did it." But what pushed him to the edge was an incident in 2021. "I was on a yacht in Capri," he said, "just a few close friends. I think someone mentioned the lighthouse again. They said, 'It's back.' He started again." That night, I excused myself and went to the edge of the yacht, thinking about jumping. I spent years pretending nothing was wrong, smiling on red carpets, accepting awards, while knowing somewhere out there, people were still trapped, still hurt, because I didn't say anything. He didn't jump, but I swore he almost did. He didn't jump down, but he swore. I decided that if the day ever came when this man had to pay for what he did, I decided that if the day ever came when this man had to pay for what he did, I would testify no matter the cost. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Diddy shifted uncomfortably at the defense table, whispering to his lawyer. But it was too late. Leonardo DiCaprio was no longer just a Hollywood star. He was a whistleblower, and he wasn't finished yet. Then, the prosecution presented a sealed manila envelope. DiCaprio's face changed the moment he saw it. "Is that the file?" he asked quietly. The lawyer nodded. "Lawyer." Leo explained, "This file contains messages, screenshots, notes. I've collected them over the years from people who contacted me anonymously, from those who were there, from victims. He should never have had this file." According to his testimony, it was given to him in 2019 by a former assistant to a powerful record label executive. She was shaking when she handed it to me. She said, "If I disappear, give it to someone who can't be silenced." I asked her, "Why me?" She said, "Because you still have a soul." The records, as described in court, included detailed logs of parties, security footage, and names of underage individuals who were allegedly seen on Diddy's estate and never left in public. Leo refused to say most of their names out loud. They deserved their privacy. Some were still trying to move on with their lives. Some were still too afraid to speak out. But one person had come forward directly. Her name was redacted in court, but DiCaprio said it aloud. She had been trafficked through industry connections and claimed she spent 3 months inside Diddy's circle before escaping with what she called the help of a guilty friend. Leo read one of her messages aloud. "If anyone found out what he did to us, they'd bury him, but they'd bury us too. I just want someone to say out loud what happened, even if no one believes it." DiCaprio then looked straight at the judge and said, "That's why I'm here." He ended his testimony by saying he believed Diddy's empire wasn't built just on music, but on fear, silence, and shame. He said the man might be the one who jumps, but it's the shadow that moves with him. You have to pay attention. The judge called for another short recess, but the courtroom remained frozen. No one said a word, not even the defense team. When the jury returned, it was clear something had changed in the room. Diddy looked visibly pale. His team shuffled papers nervously, and a lawyer hissed angrily in his ear. Diddy slammed his hand on the table and stood up. With the judge's permission, Diddy's lawyer requested to speak privately with the judge. A brief conversation followed. No one knows what was said, but when the lawyers returned to their seats, the prosecution stood up and asked Leonardo to make his closing statement. Leo cleared his throat. "I'm not here because I hate Sean Combs. I'm here because I believe in accountability. I believe in the truth." He paused. "This trial isn't about fame. It's not about Hollywood. It's a story about a system that lets one man do whatever he wants for decades just because he's rich, well-connected, and dangerous. It's about the people he's hurt while we all look the other way. You once told me the only thing people care about is the party. Well, the party's over, and now it's time to clean up the mess." Then Leonardo turned straight toward Diddy. "You once told me the only thing people care about is the party. Well, the party's over, and now it's time to clean up the mess." The room fell silent. Diddy muttered something under his breath. The court's microphone picked it up. He said, "This isn't over. None of this is true. They're all just actors." Leo calmly replied, "So I guess now you finally know what it feels like to star in one of your movies. Only this time, you won't be getting a script." The judge adjourned the trial for the day. Reporters rushed out. The jury sat statue still. And Diddy, for the first time in a long while, looked defeated. As Leonardo DiCaprio left the courtroom under police escort, he passed through a crowd of onlookers. Some applauded. Others just stared in disbelief. But one thing everyone knew, whether they believed it or not, the trial had changed everything. And that was that.